Hey everyone, Aviation Cadet, ex-Aviation Cadet Sabir Shah here again. And again, most of my videos are about flight PK8303. And I'm very touchy about uh, this incident. There's no specific reason. I even don't know the pilots. I don't know the crew members. I don't know any of the passengers who who got perished in this really disastrous incident. But the thing is, as being a Pakistani, and from day one, from the minute one, the news was broken, how the perception was built to blame the pilots only. That's my whole concern. And I would give my disclaimer in the beginning that eventually every air crash, the pilots are responsible for their miscalculations, for everything, because they have the controls. I totally agree with that one. But who put them in that situation have to be addressed. You can't say it was just solely their mistake at all. Now, it shouldn't be the custom of putting blames on others as well. But no, it's a team effort, it's a collective effort, and all these people who work on the ground on the aircrafts, the staff that issues our tickets, and people who get us boarded on the aircraft, and the pilots who fly, the stewardess, those who serve us, the ATC officer, the radar control. So all these people, they are collectively a team. And any disaster that happens, you cannot single out one of them. So not even a single video about this incident has gone through me that has pointed out the others' mistakes. Definitely there were their mistakes too, but no one pointed out. Know why? Because of the initial report and things were given to people like the famous analysts on YouTube, and then they also start spreading the same message, and that's where I get offended, I would say. Although I shouldn't be getting offended, but yeah. But I think it's not justice to the people who lost their lives. They need to know the truth, and the truth was not out in this report. So today's video is about Mentour Pilot, my mentor too. He makes great videos, excellent presentation. I mean, there's no way that when you start watching his first 30 seconds and you don't go until the end of the video, at least it has never happened to me. He explains things so beautifully, and then wherever the suggestions are required, he gives them up. Wherever the suggestions are not required, where he thinks that he has his limitations and he doesn't have the authority to give any suggestions, he just doesn't give it. So this is what I like about him. When this PK8303 happened, I saw his first report as well, second one, and then with Bronco Lario, he had a kind of 2-hour long podcast. I saw that one as well. And now he has made another 54-minute long video where I posted a comment under it before seeing the video, because I'm not his Patreon. So the YouTube contents came to me when he posted them on YouTube, but his Patreons, they got the contents before me. But as in my comments, I already said initially that if you haven't pointed out the people who put the pilots under those conditions, then this video is, I won't regard it. People did it. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of views on that one. And I mean, I'm an ex-aviation cadet, and I'm not no expertise in passenger flying, and I have no idea about Airbuses, how they operate. But I know about the joining procedures, the culture in Pakistan, and the things, how the propaganda spread in Pakistan, and for what. So let's go through his video, and I pointed out 9 of his mistakes. Yep, because I'm deeply into this incident, and wherever I see a discrepancy, he's not eligible. I mean, not eligible. Sorry, he is totally eligible. Of course, he's the expert. He's not obliged to reply to me. I would tag him, and hopefully that he would. I'm not saying that to change his mind, because what report says is what he tells people. So let's go and start from the first video.
On top of that, it was also taking place during the holy month of Ramadan, meaning that most of the crew members were fasting. Cabin crew called up the pilots and asked if they were interested in a light snack, but they both politely declined. Remember, they were still fasting. And from the voice transcripts, it looks like the pilots were getting along reasonably well, discussing the pandemic and how it was affecting their lives, pretty much exactly like we all were doing back then. But it was when they were getting closer to the top of descent that the first clues of what was ultimately...
So you saw the video, video 1, 2, not just taking short clips. My channel is not monetized. I'm not worried about that. So that's why I'm playing the whole clips. There are, I think, no copyright infringements on this public video. But if there are, I would remove and then I'll post the video again. It doesn't matter for me. So, first thing, nowhere in the whole report it was mentioned that the crew members were fasting. Nowhere. But they did put a clause that what happens if you're fasting. That's it. That's to get the people's mind into state of confusion that they were fasting. Okay. Now let me tell you, I was flying from 1994 till 1996 in Pakistan Air Force, and we are right that Ramadan is one of the biggest holy months in Muslim countries, and people observe Ramadan. It means no eating, drinking, smoking, anything from morning, from dawn till dusk. But there are exceptions. And during my time when we were flying, we had kind of religious guys who were totally religious, you know, and the religious guy could be known from his outfit, from his attire, from his appearance. Beard, number 1. If you see a person clean shaved like me, so I might not be a practicing Muslim, 99.9%. And if you look at Mr. Captain, he had no beard at all. And pilots are given, there are 4 schools of thoughts in Islam. Schools of thoughts, I'm not talking about the sects under them. Actually, there are 5 schools of thoughts. Number 1 is called Hanafis, then is Malikis, then is Shafis, then is Hanbalis, and then is Jafris. These 5 schools of thoughts, like Hanafis from Imam Abu Hanifa, Malikis from Imam Malik, and Imam Shafi, Imam Hanbal, and then Imam Jafar. So collectively, now I'm talking about 30 years ago when I was flying, we were given exoneration that when we are flying, we are not supposed to keep fast. Now, normally, if you don't have any excuse and you don't keep a fast, then you have to give food to 60 people, you know, to, cater for what you have missed. It's not allowed to miss. When you're an adult, you have to keep fast. But exceptions, and one of them, if you're sick, you don't have to do it. If you're taking medication, you don't have to do it. And if you have time in the future, you can, remake the fasting. So pilots are excused. All those people who travel are excused. And the traveling, there's a certain distance of I think 66 kilometers or something. If you are traveling beyond that distance, you're excused. So don't make it that strict that they were fasting. I, on the other hand, say they were not fasting. The report doesn't say they were fasting. It just mentions that probably, but not even probably. They just said no one accused pilots of fasting. They refused the snacks. Well, people do that. But if you, for example, if I'm not fasting and I have a person who's fasting in front of me, I would not eat in front of him. This is a culture. This is basic courtesy. I would not do that. There will be passengers who will be keeping fast because they are not. There's not obligation for them to not to keep fast when they're traveling. You can still you can do that, but if you don't want to, you're allowed. So that's how the drinks are going into the pilot section, and then they're eating, drinking. So the people at the back would definitely see that. So people, out of courtesy, refuse the drinks and the snacks in public places. Okay, so it's not an excuse that they were fasting. Although I would totally say that when you are fasting, it affects your efficiency. Happened to me. I wasn't fasting. Not only fasting, there are other things which, if you encounter with, then you shouldn't be flying. Now, back in my times, we were very young cadets, and we didn't have any girlfriends or boyfriends, So the training was very tough. So you know about the wet dreams. So we were told even during that time that if you have a wet dream and you discharge from the previous evening, that it's better that you don't fly the next morning. You tell us, and we will give you excuse flying, and you can fly the next day, just so that your nutrition levels, your energy levels should be fulfilled. And on top of that, we used to get, after every morning briefing, we used to get really enriched cakes. And our T-bar was one of the immaculate T-bars at our flying areas. And that was on the house by the Air Force, so we used to go there and get our nutrition levels, the energy levels up. So we used to have at least 2 pieces before flying and a cup of tea, which gives you energy. You should be fit. So once I had the wet dream, don't ask me who I was doing. I will not say, just with the same, the Miss Universe. No, I don't say anything. But anyhow, I went, and I was lagging behind my course. I had a nose broken, and I joined the basic flying training 3 months later than my course mates, which means that I was at least 12 weeks behind my course. 3 months is almost 12 weeks, and we had Fridays off back then. Not Saturdays and Sundays back then. It was only 1 day off, Friday off. So 6 days of flying every week. So for 4 weeks, for 12 weeks, you could see that I was behind my course 72 hours. And I used to fly 3 sorties a day on jet flying without any G suit to cover up with my course. So I had to fly circuit solo, I had to fly general maneuvering, I had to fly instrument flying, formation flying, and navigation. All these I have to complete and stay with my course, otherwise I would have been relegated to previous course. But I did even flew 3 missions. So for me, that was the first time when I had the wet dream and I was lagging behind. I should have said no, but I didn't tell my instructor pilot and went for flying, and we were doing the clover leaf. And in the clover leaf maneuver, once you put the aircraft into dive, you roll it up, and you drop it on your wing goes down, then you level off and then drop on the other one. So it goes like a clover leaf. So I remember very clearly, I went up, when I dropped the wing down, and my pitch nose down was too much. I rolled to the right, and my pitch was more than 20 degrees. So what do? And my speed was over 150 knots on C-130s. So what do? You pull excessive G's. You have to pull. I pulled about 6 G's. Instructor pilot was sitting right next to me, and whoop, G-locked right away. In my whole flying career, it never happened to me but on that day, because my body was not fully ready to fly. So yes, fasting makes a huge difference, but none of the actions from these pilots can actually prove that they were mentally not there. It could happen to anyone on any day, and probably the same actions would have been taken by them. So this first three videos of them fasting, I deny them. They were not fasting. If you say they were fasting, Schrodinger's cat, I say equally, they were not fasting.
He had been required to go through a psychological evaluation, like all of us pilots have to do. He ended up failing that assessment with, let's say, a far from flattering evaluation from the airline psychologists. They said that he was of bossy nature, firm, dominant, and overbearing. He had below average intelligence, and he tends to have little regard for the authority. He also had low mechanical comprehension with low comprehension of spatial relations, and his level of stress tolerance was also quite inadequate. Now that evaluation.
Now the second, about 1996, the pilot's evaluation test was failed. The psych evaluation test was failed. Let me tell you, almost 99% of PIA's pilots, their levels of this psych evaluation testing, and almost all of them at certain level, or initially or in the end or wherever, they do fail. I mean, they don't fail the test. It's like once you don't come up to the standards of the psych. It was a woman, by the way. And sorry to say, this news was broken by Mr. Mubashir Luqman, one of the famous anchors in Pakistan, working on the main media channels. And on the second day of this incident, the fasting thing came in, and the psych evaluation failed by Captain Sajjad. So on the second day of the incident, I mean, the incident happens today, and the next day, Mr. Mubashir Luqman was the first one. I'll post a link here. You can see it. It's in Urdu, but you can put the subtitles in English down, and you would know what he's saying. So according to Mr. Mentour Pilot, he said that because he thinks the investigation team, they had to talk to the courts in 2002 because nothing remained before that, no record of, because that testing happened in 1996 and PIA doesn't have the record, but they had to approach to the courts, and the court had the record of Mr. Sajjad, and it was by a media person who was told to say that by someone. I won't say it now because I've said it in my previous videos. And that was the origin of this fasting, and the psych evaluation failed. Now, logically think about that. 30 years ago, you failed a psych test. So you're questioning the British psych evaluators. 3 of them cleared Mr. Sajjad. 3 of them, not 1, not 2, not 3. 3 of them cleared it, and 2 of them in Pakistan. So means that people in England also, we can buy them and just get our desired results. If you think like that, I would give it, yeah, probably that would have happened. And the person has been flying for 30 years until 2020, May 20th, 21st. He had no crashes. If he had no mechanical level, low IQ, blah, 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 he would have been perished long ago, because it doesn't make any sense to me. But anyhow, I had to correct that as well, that it's wrong. This was a media perception given by the media. Media was fed by someone, Mr. Mubashir Luqman, and he said, this is his story, by the way, on the second day of this crash.
From the voice transcripts, it looks like the pilots were getting along reasonably well, discussing the pandemic and how it was affecting their lives, pretty much exactly like we all were doing back then. But it was when they were getting closer to the top of the descent that the first clues of what was ultimately.
And then in this video it says, and from the transcripts, you can see the pilots were getting along really well, and they were talking about blah, 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 blah. Where is the transcript? I haven't seen anything in the final report. Nothing, no conversation of two pilots talking to each other has been reported before that. The initial report of this incident, I've seen nothing over there. It was mentioned by our matric failed aviation minister, the one who couldn't even pass his high school. It was given the portfolio of being an aviation minister of Pakistan. And that's what he said in the parliament, when he also said, which was, by the way, Mr. Mentour Pilot, in the end of the video, he said that there were 40% fake licenses. Hello. The inquiry was done, and only 17 pilots' licenses were doubtful, because those 17 out of 850, those 17 pilots, they were stupid. When they were flying, they were in a mission going to another country, and someone was taking a test. By the way, one of my coursemate was also among them. My coursemate who left Pakistan Air Force and joined, I won't say the name. He was among those ones, and he was suspended. He was suspended prior to that, not this aviation minister, this illiterate, the one who doomed Pakistan International Airlines, Mr. Ghulam Sarwar. Even before that, like, I think 3 years before that, he was suspended. The inquiry was going on. And he comes up with this stupid, silly statement that 40%, 250 pilots or fake licenses. Give me a break. This is, I know that there's no law and order in Pakistan, but it's still not that worse that you would let a horse cart, jockey, let him fly the 747s and stuff like that. No, sir. Nah. So these two were wrong. They're not mentioned in the report.
Noticed that the frequency had gone completely quiet. It should be mentioned here that we almost never switch to a new frequency in the air unless we are clearly handed over by the previous air traffic controller. So the fact that they did this anyway is just another indication of severe complacency by these two pilots.
Yeah, and this frequency thing that I have mentioned in my previous video as well, that a pilot doesn't get revelation from Jesus Christ or, from Allah or from Bhagwan or from, whatever the gods are up in the universe. He's instructed to change to a certain frequency, or the local area protocols, the LOPs, they tell you what frequencies are normally going to be used, or you are told. So the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. But if you remove a few parts of all the call directions between the radar control, Karachi Tower, and the pilots, then that's dishonesty, I think. The calls between them, initial calls, where I'm sure that radar control has given him a frequency to follow on. And there were no airplanes in the air. There was one bound to Islamabad. Yeah, there was one, bound to Karachi after them. Sorry, there were two aircrafts in the air, the whole air, because it was after COVID. One was going to Islamabad and one was coming from Islamabad. And there were only 3 aircrafts in the air of the whole Pakistan, right? There were only 3 aircrafts. And so this frequency, if it were a busy day like on Karachi airport, normally these days, like AirBlue also lands, Qatar Airways, and then there's a huge traffic of the local, and the Air Force and stuff like that. So then it would be a trouble. But that day there was no one else in the air. And that comes to the next point. When they were given the Nawab Shah initially, and then the air traffic controller also thought, and the radar controller also thought, that why should they go through a longer way and come and land? Just take a shortcut, right? It was the radar controller decision to tell them to get this shortcut and go directly to Makli. It wasn't the pilot's decision. They were going through their normal, Nawab Shah routine, which was already entered in the flight control panel, or whatever you call FCP or FCM. So it was already there. It was the radar control and the ADCO that told them to change the plan. And then they were radioed out. When you are radioed out, you don't start your descent, right? That's what has happened. Because of the shortcut, that height level difference, and then the all of a sudden change of their plan, the ADCOs and the radar control plan. So this has led to this incident too. Well, why would you give them a shortcut? Answer me. Because there were no aircrafts in the air. Okay, so you want to save some fuel to a state-owned company which is already going in losses, and countries also, we were going through IMF problems and stuff like that, and country needed dollars. We're going to be bankrupt and stuff like that. So, well, they did it in a good faith to give him a shortcut. Yeah. And that's the reason he didn't take this left hold. What's the reason? You take a shortcut to save some fuel, some pennies to the airlines, and then you get into that hole and you take a 360-degree turn, and then you burn the same amount of fuel you saved on that shortcut and the same amount of time you saved on that shortcut, and you spend it over there. So what's the fun? So that's why you didn't get into the hole. And now I'm saying that the pilot had their own thinkings. Now you can call it wrong, but I would say I would have taken the same decision. If the principle is to save some pennies to the airlines, to the country, state-owned airline, I would not take the hold. And what SOPs, what limitations of the aircraft they have crossed. The VFE in Mr. Mentour Pilot's lectures, because I wanted to know about these, different velocities which the aircrafts fly on, the speeds and stuff like that. So he beautifully explained that what is the limitation and how do they test it in that video. I forgot the video, but I'm going to find it and send you the link in the bottom. It's by Mentour Pilot. None of the aircraft limitations were, even when they were at 13.7 degree dive, and going, I think, 280 knots per hour, still under the limitations of the aircraft. The aircraft could not have been damaged by that action. So in order to get to that flight path, you can do anything which is under limitation. Now, it may not be the SOPs, it may not be the LOPs, but that's how, creativity comes in. So if they have crossed the limitations of the aircraft later on, when they touched without the gears, that I would blame on them. But before that, no, you can't blame them for any violations. They didn't violate anything.
The incoming aircraft was really, really high. He called up his colleague, the approach controller, and told him, "Sir, it's too high." And the approach controller, who had already seen this for quite a while, responded, "Yes, it's too high. I'm observing it and I will give it an orbit." A few seconds later.
Now, this is, in my previous video, I also mentioned this part. The radar controller, because the Juma prayers were not held back then, and he was probably in his, tower, and so he called through, the hotline, which is through your mouthpiece to the ADCO, because that mouthpiece, you cannot take it to the prayers or to the mosque, which is far away. But second time he called on the landline, when he said that, the aircraft has whatever has happened. So why on the landline? Once you are already geared up, you have your earphone in, your mouthpiece on, and you're talking to the ADCO, and you have talked to him on the hotline, why would you call the landline? Why? And please, after that one, tell me, when did the ADCO tell the pilots to take a go round or get into the orbit, which he, in this report, says that he would tell them to get into the orbit. Where was that call? Until they came down to around, I think, 3,000 feet. This was already, they were at 7,500 before the gears were lowered down before that, so probably at 9,000 feet. And there were no calls from the ADCO. He should have instructed them. But they gave them the shortcut initially just to save a few pennies. So why would he let them get into the orbit? So he still waited until they came down to 3,000 when he said, "Sir, the left is available. Please take a left." And again, that language used,
If he had heard that remark, the approach controller now came back in with a direct order. Pakistan 8303, disregard, turn left heading 180.
Again, what was the sentence? I forgot. A man without woman is nothing, or a woman without man is nothing. Something like that, you know. So disregard, turn left. What does that mean? Turning left, disregard, or disregard previous calls and then turn left? Where are the previous calls? None. Not given. So if there's a transcript of everything, then we can, you know, judge all these people. But not. Until then, this didn't happen. They didn't give him a call to orbit. They could not have given him a call to orbit. Reason being, they were trying to save some pennies.
This time, the first officer was giving 2/3 pitch-up commands on his side stick, indicating that he was wanting to go around, while the captain continued giving full nose-down input.
Now, I think in my previous video as well, I've clearly said that because the report says there were multiple dual control inputs, and there was only one dual input that was opposite to the other side. Rest, all of them, they were for the same purpose. Although we know that if at least in Air Force, what I know of, that once my instructor says that I have the controls, I would not dare touch anything in the cockpit. And if my instructor gave me the control, that you have the controls, he would not touch anything. I haven't seen that. But here, I mean, again, this I will give benefit of doubt to the situation the first officer was in for the first time. And again, I mean, if the captain was bossy, if he was the kind of this kind of person, aggressive and, you know, not listening to subordinates, he would not let the captain, the first officer fly the aircraft. He would have been doing it by himself, you know. But we have seen that from the descent all the way till 1,100 feet when captain clicked and saying that he has the controls because he was given the permission to land. Who gives a permission to land to a hot and high aircraft at 1,000 feet?
And things were still not over. At time 14:32 and 58 seconds, Karachi approach cleared Pakistan Airlines flight A303 to land on runway 25 left. So even though the gear was now up and the descent rate had moderated, the approach was still being continued, with the speed hovering at around 235 knots.
1,000 feet is already a go-round stage, which the first officer already did. So here I would say that these two had different opinion. And for how long? For how many seconds? Because the gears were gotten up, the speed brakes were pushed out in, and the flaps. By the way, this is the way to initiate a go-round.
And also, and this is really important, the gear was selected up as well as the speed brake retracted. Now, none of these actions were called out by whoever did them, but given the fact that it was the first officer who started pitching up, that would suggest that it was likely he who also retracted the gear and the speed brakes, most likely in an attempt to stop the approach. Now, retracting the gear...
There is no rocket science involved. Once you have your gears on, you have your speed brakes out, you have your flaps down. To initiate the go-round, what you do is you go in the reverse sequence. Yeah, whatever is within the speed, so you get the flaps up, you get the speed breakers in, you get the gears up, and put the power on, and you go around. That's what exactly the first officer did. But then the ATC officer gave them a clearance to land. Where was the tower guy? The tower guy should have been seeing a plane coming like a rocket to the runway because he can see the runway. ATC came. The radar control guy was not there, and he was absent from duty while a flight was coming in so hot and high. Okay, there's no doubt about that the flight was hot and high. But why would you give a clearance to that person? You should have given. And after 911, if this pilot disobeys, he would be stripped off all his ranks and he would be thrown in the prison. That's the whole world's rule. You cannot defy the ADCO. Why would he given him the clearance? Because he was also in a hurry to go and offer Jummah prayers, I think. Now, the other lie was, which was mentioned in the report as well, which Mentour Pilot also took, that the emergency procedures were called. There were the fire trucks. None of them were on the runway. None of them were seen on the runway. And the crash site is 1 kilometer from the touchdown threshold. None of the CAAC, this whole emergency squadron was there. None of them. It was ED, a private NGO run since 1960s in Pakistan by Abdul Sattar ED, JDC, the newly born Karachi's local NGO again, helping people, that one. And then the Rangers came in, and their helicopters, they started to, help people, getting this, because the streets are really small. But these mini ambulances, they're very small. They're like those Suzuki, the small vans. Like them, they can go anywhere, CAAC never pushed the emergency, never. Because you would have prepared the runway for belly landing at least, yeah? There would be foam on the runway being because you know that the plane has belly landed, and you are asking him to confirm belly landing or not. So if they're saying no, but even then you have to prepare for that. What if none of the emergency procedures were called in?
Catastrophic, but at least they were still on the runway and therefore close to emergency services. Had they just stayed in this configuration, they would have likely overshot the runway, but at least they would have been with a decent chance of survival. But that was sadly not to be. About 14 seconds after the initial touchdown, the first officer cried.
And by saying that once they touched down, they should have remained there and they would have overshot a runway for a little bit of time, and then they would have just landed there. Full stop landing. Now, exactly 10 years ago in India, with the same Airbus A320, there was a Brazilian pilot and with his Indian first officer. They were hot and high, and they had the gears down. They had their flaps to minimum position. They had the speed breakers in. They had all the perfect landing configuration. They landed at 4,000 mark with all the gears down, with everything reverse working, and the brakes would be working because the aircraft has the landing configuration. What happened to that flight? And I've seen on Mentour Pilot's channel about that video as well, so that was in my mind right away. That the same aircraft, same configuration, almost similar amount of people, 50 extra, 147, 150 something people died on that craft because the aircraft couldn't get to a full stop landing. And the runway length is almost the same. And it eventually ended up in a canyon, and that's where disaster happened. And this aircraft would have run into the highway and gone into the vessel base where our military facility is. And imagine a military facility, an airplane coming in, what would those guys have done in the first place? They would have bombed them out right away. So, it was not possible for this aircraft, without gears, without anything, and landing at the speed of 245 knots, and yet stopping. No, that was a good call to go around, check everything, and then come back.
Out a belly landing? The first officer responded, "Negative, sir," but this was almost immediately followed by the captain asking if the gear was extended. When the first officer confirmed that the gear was not extended, a sound similar to the landing gear lever being moved down could almost immediately be heard. The aircraft was at this moment still relatively far away from the runway and flying at a relatively low speed. So to, in this situation, extend the gear.
Yeah, that's the only thing which I would blame the pilots. They shouldn't have lowered the gears down, but under that second situation, and of course they are experienced, and he has done that before, the report says. He has done many times these kind of landings, but with both the engines down, if you get the gears down, definitely the drag is going to be induced. And then in the end, the flaps kind of thing, no flaps, no flaps, no flaps, but he still got the flaps down, and initially the aircraft sinks. So I think that was the major contribution. The pilot's miscalculation, the pilot's error here is initially the go round, the first go round. The first pilot, for first officer, when he initiated, it should have been done by then. But somehow the captain got the call from the ADC, so he wanted to land, but he had no idea if the gears were up or down. So this was a confusion, and that's why, or maybe he thought that the gears are gonna come down once the speed is gonna be lower than whatever the speed for the gear lowering is. So that's why he applied the brakes as well. That's why he put the reverse thrusters as well. So this all makes sense, you know. It's not like a pilot would do the same things once he touched down. But once he realized the gears are not coming out and the aircraft is not stopping down, it's not slowing down, so why keep going? So initiate the go round. And that's where both the pilots had the stakes up and they initiated the go round. I think I have covered all these 8 or 9 points about the Mentor Pilot because he did reply me a message on my comments that time. So I think I'm I have one honest request to all these analysts. Please get the audio transcripts if you can from Airbus or from, and make them public. They should be public. From the time they joined Karachi Tower, everything should be public because they were, what were they talking about? They were not talking about, what side, whatever, this is not, there was no private conversation. If they were talking about COVID, we have rights to know what they were talking about so that we should know. Each and every time frame should be given from the time they joined Karachi, the Karachi area, the Karachi aerodrome, all the way when they landed. My last question to all these people who are talking about the pilot's mistake. Yeah, okay. Where is the flight path? Every report which I've seen gone through my eyes, they show the flight path of the aircraft. There's no flight path for this aircraft. We only know that it touched down. After that, where it went, of course, we crashed in the model town in that area. But during that time, where was it? If you see the time of the touchdown all the way till the crash time, it's almost 9 minutes because at 32 they touched down the first time, whatever time, the 32 minutes, and they crashed at 42 plus some 46 seconds. So there's an 11-minute gap in between. And with those speeds, with that climb rate, with that thing, they would have, come back to the initial joining point and take 2 rounds. Yeah, because if you see from Makli, there were 7,000 feet high with a speed a little bit more speed than normal. It took them 3 minutes to be at the touchdown point. So it was 10 nautical miles away from this touchdown point. So if it took them 3 minutes with speeds almost 75% down, 11 minutes. So see, they could have gone back, come back again, gone back and come back again. So, and yeah, they covered it up. They said that it was not because of the engine failure, the electric power system was out, so there's no record of that one. Very convenient. The aircraft was given the heading of 110 by the ADCO, but the aircraft was flying at 103. Now, could that be the mistake of the pilot again? I'm just thinking, why is 103? Why not 110, which looks like a very good number to me. When I'm adjusting anything, I go with the round numbers, and 110 is a round number to me instead of 103. And same is the case with frequency. 126.5 is not a random number. 125.5 is a very common number. 125, see 120, 130, 115, 110. So 1 to 6.5 is either you're instructed or you made a mistake. So anyhow, that was my 2 cents on this incident. Hope to see you. Leave your comments in the comment box. Thank you.